Welcome everyone, I'm the Depressed Eeyore, and this is Dark Souls 2, or more specifically, the character creation in Dark Souls 2. So, there's generally, the way the game starts is you have an intro thing, you kind of wander around at level 1 with no class and no abilities or anything like that, and then you go to do some story stuff, and then you get to go to this screen, which allows you to pick your class and all that. So I'm there right now, and how it's going to work is, I'm going to show you guys how some of the general mechanics work for those who don't know, and then you guys can put in the comments below what class or general build you want me to play. You can also suggest a name and stuff. I will probably be playing a female character because why not? I usually do. And you guys are going to have essentially a few weeks, maybe a week or so to make your decision. I'll try to remember to put this, pin this on the front of my channel so you guys can actually see it even as it scrolls off the recent video list. So let's go ahead and quickly go over some stuff about Dark Souls 2. So first of all, the things you get to pick is your class and your gift, and then the rest of it's pretty much cosmetic. So let's go ahead and quickly go over the classes. Pretty much all the classes are the same from Dark Souls 1, except for the fact there is no Pyromancer class, which I'll go into Pyromancy once I start going over magic. Essentially, each of the characters start at various stats. Most of them are pretty much all the same level, or if they aren't the same level, then it balances out. Like for example, I believe a Deprive starts at a much lower level than the other classes. But what I'm trying to say, but that generally just means they just level up faster until they catch up. So it's not that big of a deal. I think the difference between some of these classes might be one level or so. And essentially a level, all that means in this game is it means one stat point. That's all it means, is one stat point. So, let's go ahead and quickly review the classes. We got the Warrior, Scarred Warrior, high strength, dexterity, and skilled with weapons. He starts out with kind of standard armor. I guess it's probably medium armor, I guess you can call it. He has a small shield, practically a buckler, and he starts with a broken sword. That's probably the only bad part. The good part, he starts out with a shield. The bad part is he starts out with a broken sword, which is practically useless, and you'll probably need to replace that. Stat-wise, as mentioned, he has decent vitality, strength, and dexterity, which is generally used for practically all physical weapons. Everything else he has pretty much below average stats in. Let's see. Can I actually pull up some stuff? Yes, I can. Okay, cool. Oh, cool. I actually just showed the level. So yeah, some of these characters start at like level 14, 11, 12, example. That little head icon here that I'm highlighting, that's your overall level. And a Deprive starts at level 1. So, what else? Okay, so yeah, there are multiple stats you can deal with. Vigor, all it does is increase your hit points. Any time you level up, your HP will go up a little bit, but if you level up Vigor specifically, you will get a larger increase in HP. It also might increase your resistance to Petrify, I believe. Endurance, it affects your maximum stamina. It also affects certain resistances as well. Vitality, it affects your equipment load. Essentially, everything has a weight in this game, and there's a limit of how much you can carry. And also, depending on how much you are carrying based off your maximum load, will decide what sort of dodge abilities you have. For example, if you are equipped with very, very heavy armor, and even though you have the load to actually carry it, it will probably make your roll very slow, sluggish, and to the point where you don't have very many invulnerability frames to rolling. There's been rumors that there's no invulnerability frames to a roll, but in this game, but that is false. You actually do, but it's based off a few things. Essentially, the more agile your roll is, the more forgiving it is for dodging attacks. Attunement. Attunement governs the number of spells you can cast. It will also boost your spellcasting speed. Essentially, you need if you're going to be any sort of caster, no matter what, even if it's pyromancy, you have to have attunement because you you need these slots in order to actually put spells in them and then use them. So even if you're like a really, really powerful caster, you still need Attunement in order to have some variety in your magics. Alright, down here. Strength. Self-explanatory, boost attack. And then, well, let's see, it's, well, specifically it boosts attack for weapons that rely on strength. Which all weapons generally have at least some sort of strength stat. But some weapons benefit from strength more than others. Like, for example, a big claymore will probably get more strength bonus than a rapier, for example. And then there's dexterity, which is essentially just like strength, but it's more finesse based. It still boosts attack, but it's more specific towards weapons that are dexterity based, like a rapier or a bow and stuff like that. Adaptability raises various attributes to ensure one's survival, boost agility, and various resistances. Essentially, all this does is it boosts a whole ton of your resistances. That's all I've gathered from it. It's a stat that generally the explorer starts out really high in compared to other classes, but overall, it's resistance. I don't know what else I can say about it. Intelligence. Attribute required for sorceries, boost magic defense, and proficiency in sorceries. There are multiple types of magic in this game. There are sorceries, miracles, hexes, and pyromancies. Intelligence boosts sorceries, and then there is faith, which will boost miracles, and it will also give you lightning defense and proficiency in miracles. Blah 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 blah. So generally, there are 4 types of magic. Like I mentioned before, there's 4 types of magic. Sorcery generally is raw magic damage, and while miracles will have lightning damage, and with a few exceptions. Then there's hexes, which is kind of a weird. It's quote unquote forbidden magic. It does dark damage, and it relies on the lowest of either intelligence or faith. So, for example, if you have a 20 intelligence and a 10 faith, and you're using hexes, it's going to be based off your 10 faith. So hexes generally require both these stats, which makes them a little bit more difficult to use, but they also have their own traits. Also, hexes, their upper tier spells actually use souls, which is your currency in this game. So you're essentially throwing money and experience when you use them, but you don't have to use those. The final path of magic is pyromancy. Pyromancy is very, very kind of unique in that it doesn't rely on any stat. The only thing you need for to use pyromancy is, of course, the item that actually you have. Well, each of the types of magic have their own sort of item you have to have equipped to use it. For example, sorceries usually use staffs, while faith uses chimes or holy symbols or something like that. And pyromancies use flames, which are just your hands on fire. And that's the only requirement you really have to use pyromancy. Is you have to have that flame, and you have to have, of course, the attunement slots to slot the spells. The only thing that boosts your pyromancy is buffing up the flame. Like, you can actually enhance your gear in this game, and the only way to improve your ability with pyromancy is to enhance your flame. It's part of the reason why pyromancy is no longer a class you can start as, because it's essentially as a pyromancer in Dark Souls 1, you're essentially a spellcaster that didn't have any of the detriments of a spellcaster. I mean, pyromancy does have its weaknesses. It's generally not as long range as sorcery and some other things. It's also pure fire magic, which can be an issue in some stages. But I mean, you don't have to use any stats for it, so except for attunement, so it's pretty safe to use in the build to have as a secondary build or even a primary. But that's me rambling about the stats. So that's the stats. Hopefully that didn't confuse you too much. Let's go ahead and go back into the classes. Essentially, the classes just affect your starting ability, your starting gear, and your starting stats. You can literally build to whatever you want as you go through the game. Like, for example, when I beat the game, I was an explorer, but by the end of it, I was a hex caster, which was essentially more something like a sorcerer. So, let's go ahead and get this going. Knight, high HP and adaptability, tough to take down. So he has high... Yeah, he has generally high adaptability, which means more resistances. He has high HP. He also has high strength. He also uses a two-handed sword, which can be really good, as it can allow you to do sweeping strikes and hit multiple enemies at once. And that's about it. Swordsman. Finely skilled swordsman, fights gracefully with strong weapons in both hands. This guy actually has high dexterity. He uses 2 weapons. I am very not familiar with 2 weapons. Supposedly, though, you can go into a certain stance that will actually buff up your dual wielding skills once you hit a certain point. But I really know nothing about it. Generally, you have when you play the game, you have your left hand and your right hand, and you have buttons specifically for each of them. So, I mean, I don't know much about using 2 weapons at once. Usually I have like a weapon and a shield or a weapon and a staff. That way I can, attack and use magic just by using, different buttons. But that's about all I know about it. Anyway, bandits. A guy with no shirt. A merciless outlaw. High dexterity, skilled with bows, fights well at various ranges. So this guy starts out with an axe, and he has a bow. I have no experience with bows. Supposedly you can, it's one of the few styles of weapons that you can actually go into first person for and actually aim it. Or you can use the targeting mode and just, shoot like that. I really don't know how effective it is, because like I said, I usually use magic. I've never used bows. Cleric. Cleric on pilgrimage. High faith and miracles guide the way. So he starts out with a chime, which is what you need to cast miracles. He also starts with a mace, which is generally a cleric weapon. He does start out with 1 spell. It's the heal spell, which can be rather useful in our early game, and it's also very useful in certain cases in PvP because, well, I'll explain that later. Sorcerer. High intelligence, high attunement, starts with magic bolt, which is just an offensive spell. He starts out with a dagger and a staff. Explorer. Well-traveled explorer. Not terribly powerful, but has many items. This guy has awful stats. Essentially, he has a 6 strength and a 6 dexterity, which makes him completely unable to use anything except a dagger right in the beginning of the game. He also starts out with bolts, but he has no crossbow. He does start out with a ring. I don't remember what that ring is, though. Not off the top of my head. He also, his armor, the merchant's clothes, is actually kind of decent for light armor. The helmet specifically, it will actually increase your chances of finding items. And then for items, as it mentioned, you do start out with more items. Most of these other characters start with literally just nothing but a few healing stones, while the explorer starts out with healing stones, a few bombs, some lucky coins, a thing you can use to repair your gear, and something you can use to unlock, activate special locks. So it's a 1 use only. That's about it from that. Stats wise, he just has high adaptability, so he just has high resistances. This character is very, very rough to start because you generally have nothing but a dagger, and you're generally going to be spending most of your time leveling up your stats just so you can use something better. And then the final class is the Deprived. Unclothed, origin unknown, has nothing to fight with except life-affirming flesh. He starts out with nothing. He has no items, no weapons, no gear, no spells. He starts at soul level 1, and all of his stats are at 6, which are pretty low. But you can pretty much build from there any way you want. It's just a matter of, finding a weapon first. And those are the classes. So essentially, feel free to vote for a class, and if you want, you can also add like a build you want me to go towards. Like for example, you could say you want me to start as a knight and then build into some sort of like magic using spell sword or something like that, or just completely change entirely. And the other thing you can mention is, of course, a name for the character and all that, and I'll try to accommodate as I can. The other thing you can pick is gifts. In this game, you can start with a gift. In Dark Souls 1, you can also start with a gift, though in Dark Souls 1 it was pretty unbalanced as far as like what it was worthwhile to pick. Most of these are kind of meh. It's not as bad as Dark Souls 1, but it's more like most of these are just useless overall. Anyway, let's go ahead and just go over these items. Petrified something. The petrified something is something where you literally just you give to a special little bird that will give you a random item in return. The petrified something is actually the highest thing you can give to the bird, so you'll actually have a decent chance of getting something pretty good.
but most of the time it's going to be probably a component. Unless you're really, really lucky, you might be able to get a weapon that's actually a weapon that you probably won't be able to use for a very long time. The bonfire aesthetic is a item that you toss into a bonfire, and it will force the entire area to respawn, and it will make the area much harder. And you can do this multiple times, and they stack. Overall, not a bad item, just not really an item you want to start with. Also, later on in the game, you can get tons of these, so keep that in mind. Seed of the Tree Giants. This item is kind of hard to... I don't really see this item very often, but at the same time, it's a purely PvP item. What this thing does is it will make it if you are ever invaded, you can activate this item to make the monsters actually aggro on the Phantom. Usually invaders will not aggro any monsters, and the monsters will not attack them directly, though they can accidentally hit him in some cases. The Seed of the Tree Giant will change this, so he has to deal with the enemies just like you do. It's kind of useful because usually some jerks will invade you, and when they're losing, they'll run away and head towards an area that you haven't cleared out yet and wait for you there, so you have to deal with both enemies and him. Homeward Bone. This is an item that lets you return to any place to the last bonfire you rested at. Bonfires are essentially checkpoints in this game. Overall, this is a basic item that you can get you can get 5 of them right off the bat early game, so it's not that big of a deal. There's also a miracle, if you actually go for the miracle route, that does the same effect as a spell. Healing wares, various items used to cure poison and restore health, essential for anyone traveling Drangliac. So you start out with additional life stones and some higher tier life stones, and you also start out with a few moss things that can cure poison. Overall, not bad. Though I generally tend not to use a lot of the higher health stones, because by the time I get them, I usually have enough healing to last me a while. Human Effigy. A familiar looking effigy returns the hollow to life. This is actually pretty useful because it lets you restore your humanity. It also has a secondary effect if you burn it in a bonfire, which I'll go into later, I guess. The only bad part is this just gives you 1, and unless you're dying a lot, well, if you're dying a lot, 1's not going to make a difference, and if you're not dying a lot, 1's not going to make a difference. So it's kind of one of those situations. And then the final item, which is the only thing that's kind of permanent, is the Life Ring. It's an old ring that slightly increases your HP. It's a ring that you can get in early game, so it's not too bad. It's definitely a ring you can get pretty early, period. But I mean, the rest of these things are temporary items, so probably out of them, it's probably the best. But by all means, you can also choose nothing if you want to be if you just want to be a jerk, I guess. So, by all means, pick a class, pick a gift, and if you want, pick a name and pick a general build you want me to go towards. I don't know how I'll decide from the comments, but I'll figure that out based off how much feedback I get. I generally didn't get too much feedback as far as the whether or not to do this Let's Play, but as far as the comments I did get, everyone was pretty much into me playing this game. So, that's what we're going to do. So, let's go ahead and do a quick review. Warrior, Warrior's sword and board. Knight is two-handed sword. Swordsman is dual-wielding weapons. Bandit is bow. Cleric is miracles. Sorcerer is sorceries. Explorer is items, I guess. And Deprived is kind of a blank slate. And, yep, that's what that. And the gifts, you got some items, some more 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 items, and a ring. Honestly, it doesn't matter what gifts you guys pick for me. When I played the game, I picked the Seed of the Tree Giant because I didn't know what it did at the time, and I never used it. So, if it's something I can't really use, I just won't use it. So, not a big deal. Alright, I think that's enough for now. Sorry it took so long. Sorry it was a little rambly. Hopefully you guys at least got something out of the stats I explained. I'll try to put some of this information in the description so you guys kind of know generally what they do. I'm not going to put the full descriptions of the stats because the stats they influence a lot more than the description really reveals, but I'll show more of that when we actually start the game. It's a lot easier to explain at that point.
So, I am the Depressed Eeyore, and this was Dark Souls 2. Make your votes in the comments below, and in a few weeks we'll get this show on the road. See you guys there.